Over the last decade, Vladimir Putin's government has evolved from tolerating dissent to ruthlessly suppressing any activities or people who dared challenge it. Today is Thursday, March 7th, 2024, and this is the Dunkley Report. Over the last decade, Vladimir Putin's government has evolved from tolerating dissent to ruthlessly suppressing any activities or people who dared challenge it. Arrests, trials, and lengthy prison terms have become especially common in the last 2 years, after Putin sent troops into Ukraine, and his security and law enforcement apparatus went after those who spoke out against it. Along with its political opponents, the Kremlin also went after prominent rights activists, critical media outlets, and even social groups like the LGBTQ+ community. Oleg Orlov, co-chair of the country's most prominent human rights group, says, "Russia is no longer an authoritarian state. It is a totalitarian state." Russian authorities have adopted a slew of laws restricting fundamental human rights, including freedom of speech and assembly, as well as the rights of minorities and religious groups. These laws have taken aim at foreign agents, allegedly seeking to exert influence on Russia, members of the LGBTQ+ community, and organizations spreading information critical of the Kremlin or contrary to official narratives. They have helped the Kremlin to maintain tight control over the country's political system. As a result, President Vladimir Putin is expected to extend his rule virtually unchallenged in a presidential election this month. The sound of a large explosion reverberated around the Ukrainian port of Odesa as President Volodymyr Zelensky and Greece's Prime Minister ended a tour of the war-ravaged southern city Wednesday. The Greek Prime Minister said the delegations were getting into their vehicles when they heard the blast. Zelensky said the explosion caused an unknown number of dead and wounded. Russian officials made no immediate comment. The European Commission president calls it a new attempt at terror by Russia. Foreign leaders have made numerous trips to Ukraine, and they occasionally have had to take refuge in shelters when air raid sirens sound. Russian opposition leader Alexei Navalny's widow has called on his supporters to join a protest of this month's presidential election that Navalny devised shortly before his still unexplained death. Navalny died in an Arctic prison 3 weeks ago. Yulia Navalnaya asked in a video message released Wednesday for Russians opposed to President Vladimir Putin to get in line at voting stations on March 17th. That's the last and main day of voting. Putin is certain to win a 5th term in office that could potentially extend his rule to 2030. The election includes only token opponents. The UN's atomic watchdog agency chief is visiting Russia amid concern about a Ukrainian nuclear power plant caught in the crossfire, since Moscow sent troops into Ukraine in 2022 and seized the facility shortly after. IAEA Director General Rafael Mariano Grossi arrived at the Black Sea resort of Sochi on Tuesday evening, according to Russian state news agency RIA Novosti, for talks on nuclear safety in Ukraine. The International Atomic Energy Agency has repeatedly expressed alarm about the Zaporizhzhia nuclear power plant, Europe's largest, amid fears of a potential nuclear catastrophe. Over the last 5 months, Israel has killed thousands of Hamas fighters, destroyed dozens of their tunnels, and wreaked unprecedented destruction on the Gaza Strip. But it faces a dilemma that was clear from the start of the war and will determine its outcome. It can either try to annihilate Hamas, which would mean almost certain death for the estimated 100 hostages still held in Gaza, or it can cut a deal that would allow the militants to claim a historic victory. Either outcome would be excruciating for Israelis. Either would likely seal an ignominious end for Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu's long political career. And either might be seen as acceptable by Hamas, which valorizes martyrdom. The U.S. military says a missile attack by Yemen's Houthi rebels on a commercial ship in the Gulf of Aden has killed 3 of its crew members and injured at least 4. It was the first fatal strike in a campaign of assaults by the Iranian-backed group over Israel's war on Hamas in the Gaza Strip. U.S. Central Command says the missile caused significant damage to the Barbados-flagged bulk carrier called True Confidence, and the crew had to abandon the ship. Yemen's Houthi rebels claimed the attack on the vessel and insisted their assaults would continue as long as Israel's war on Hamas in the Gaza Strip continues. Haiti's embattled prime minister has landed in Puerto Rico as he tries to return to Haiti to quell a surge in violent gang attacks. Officials told the Associated Press that Ariel Henry landed late Tuesday afternoon at the Luis Muñoz Marin International Airport in the capital of San Juan. The officials spoke on condition of anonymity because they were not authorized to confirm his arrival. Henry was expected to travel to the Dominican Republic later to fly to Haiti, but the government of the Caribbean nation closed its air borders as gangs in Haiti continue to escalate their attacks on key targets, such as prisons and the main international airport. Canada will restore funding to the United Nations Relief Agency for Palestinians, a government official tells the Associated Press, weeks after the agency lost hundreds of millions of dollars in support following Israeli allegations against some of its staffers in Gaza. Canada's foreign minister is currently in the Middle East and plans to visit Israel. It is not clear when the announcement will be made. The UN agency, known as UNRWA, is the main supplier of food, water, and shelter in Gaza. But it is on the brink of financial collapse. The French president is appealing to the public to collect photos, films, personal journals, and testimony from witnesses to liberation from the Nazis, as the country prepares to mark the 80th anniversary of the Normandy landings in 1944. In a video message, Emmanuel Macron called on people to share and inscribe family memories into France's national history. The French president specifically urged school children to seek out heroes from Africa, the Pacific, and elsewhere who sacrificed their youth and often their lives for the liberty of France. In June, France plans to show its gratitude towards World War II veterans with a ceremony at Omaha Beach in Normandy. Today's news was reported by the Associated Press. This has been the World News for Thursday, March 7th, 2024. Thanks again for joining us at The Dunkley Report.